I'm Teneale.
And I'm Kelsey, and we're financial advisors from 𝐴𝑙𝑚𝑎𝑛 Partners True Wealth, bringing you thought-provoking conversations around you, your money and your life on the Wealth Experience podcast.
Welcome back to Wealth Experience. And today I'm going to be asking you a question. Are you a DINK? Well, fair dinkum, I know that is such a dad joke to start off this podcast with, but we're going to be talking about just that. Now, if you're one of our regular listeners, you are used to hearing Kelsey's lovely accent. You don't have any such luck today. You're going to have my voice only today because it's just me in the studio. And if this podcast title caught your eye, you might be an only child, or perhaps you don't have children of your own and maybe don't see that in your future. I'm going to be talking about the good stuff that this brings, as well as the challenges. From being able to take that trip off the drop of a hat, considering who you'll be looking after when you can't look after yourself, today's financial podcast is a must listen. Now, where did this come up from? So we actually had a listener that brought up the term that I had not heard before, being a DINK, D-I-N-K. What is it? I had no idea, so I had to look it up. And it's actually a double income, no kid relationship. So D-I-N-K. And really, it's just couples that don't have financial independence, or at least children dependence. And it got me really interested. So as I do, I tend to get really involved in things. I got to Googling a lot and was trying to understand what this term even meant. And what else I saw come up was DINK-WOD. Now, what that actually means is a double income with no kids, but with a dog. And there's a host of reels that talk about DINKs and what their lifestyle is like and how that differs to people that actually have children. Some of the ones that I came across were people saying, we're DINKs. We get into snobby hobbies like skiing and golfing. We're DINKs. We're already planning our European vacation next year. We're DINKs. We get a full 8 hours of sleep and sometimes more. Oh my goodness, I think I'm going to have to stop that now because I don't want to say the word DINK again, but you're going to hear it from me throughout today's podcast. So just let's just try and move on with where we're getting to today. So there's some upsides that are going to come with this kind of a lifestyle, right? But for parents with children, there's also a lot to think about for setting up your finances. And for those without, they need to be thinking about their financial future as well. And I thought we'd share this scenario with our listeners because it was actually posed to us by one of our listeners. And some of the questions that came up, and I'd like to read out to you the bit of statement they've given us here, is all around this area of financial advice for DINKs. So here we go. The listener says, I'd like financial advice for those that don't have children. Generational wealth has always been a number one topic, but what if you don't have children or a large family or a family that you're close to? Socially, I feel that so much has changed and there are more DINKs now than ever before. I come from an upbringing where my parents lived week to week. We had all the nice and latest stuff and by society's standards were doing well for ourselves. I got to go to private schools and all the rest, but preparing for retirement was never a conversation had in my household. Consequently, my parents are not in any way prepared for a life that hasn't quite worked out exactly how they would have wanted. I myself am an only child and we find ourselves supporting our parents more often than not. It's something that my partner and I have always talked about in terms of what's next for our parents. But how do we make sure that we don't end up in that similar position? At least my parents have me to count on, right? But I don't have a me to fall back on. I don't have a child or children. It's just the two of us. What strategies can someone like myself employ to ensure that I'm prepared for retirement, have planned for the things that I need as I age, and have a comfortable income that allows me to do the things that I love and essentially die with no money in the bank? Now, I read that statement and just thought, this is so interesting to me because, we've spoken a lot on the podcast before. Kelsey and I both have children, and so we understand that lifestyle. That's not always been the case. Previous to having kids, we were in a DINK kind of a situation as well. But there are unique opportunities and challenges that you're faced if you identify as a DINK. So I thought maybe we would dive into some of those important conversations today and unpack some of it. Now, what kind of issues do we actually find are posed by couples that have dual incomes and don't have kids? And this one for me took a little bit of reflection to kind of go, well, is there a difference? If I have children, if I don't have children, do I want the same things in life or do I want different things in life? And that's going to be different for everyone, right? And we've spoken a bit on our podcast before about your why. And I think for dual income, no kids situation, thinking about your why is just as important, but you're afforded that ability a little earlier. Because if I've got children, I'm exploring what I need to be thinking about for their future. But I can be exploring what my true wealth means to me if I'm not putting the kids ahead of my own needs straight away. So those situations are going to be totally unique to every person. But if we can just take a minute to reflect and think about, well, what is it that brings me true happiness in life? What is it that I want for my future? And that doesn't need to be, a person or filled by any kinds of experiences like that. It can be just that I want to go out there and I want to visit places in the world that make me happy, or I want to spend time in nature, or I want to be really successful in my chosen career, and therefore I'm going to, invest in the things that are going to get me closer to that over time. So my challenge for anybody, but particularly those that do have two incomes coming in and maybe a bit of savings happening, and don't have dependents to support, is what is it that makes you tick, and hone in on that and set yourself those goals to understand why it is that you're choosing the life that you are. Because there's beauty in everything that we each do and the life that we each try to carve out. So I think the goal-setting piece becomes really important and becomes easy to focus on when you're not considering the goals of little ones running around. But on the converse side, and our listener did mention it, what happens when I age? What happens when I've met the goals that I wanted in life, or what happens if things don't turn out the way that I had planned? Who's going to be there to look after me? And you might be in a situation where you do have a partner and you're both achieving the goals that you've planned for and trying to create this life together. But have you really put some thought towards, well, if something changes, who's going to look after me? When I have aged, how can I make sure that I'm in a financial place that if I don't have children that I can call upon, and let's be honest, I'm not even sure that I'll have a child that I can call upon when I'm in my 80s or 90s wanting to look after me, because they might be off living their life. Leo's probably going to be well and truly enjoying his retirement by that point in time, I would hope, if I've done any good mentoring as a mother and a financial planner. But if we want to really consider, well, if I don't have someone to look after me, I need to be financially supported, right? I need to have built myself enough of a nest egg that when it comes that time, I've got choices. And we often talk about, the labels that we put on these different goals. And for some people, even the word retirement's not one that really fits. They might like financial independence or financial choice. And for DINKs in particular, I think it's important to kind of go, well, how do I make sure that I have something set up as my what if funds? So what if something changes and I need some care when I'm older? Or what if something changes and I don't have income coming in? And the ability to capture some of your surplus to put towards that from early on will set you up very well for your future. Not having those expenses of the third or the fourth or the fifth or the sixth mouth to feed, you can be putting that aside towards the future. So that's really a consideration that I think is important when you don't have dependents is who's going to be looking after me. And we tend to find that this leads in quite a lot with conversations with clients around estate planning in particular. So there's a couple of key documents that we talk about when we're looking at financial houses and making sure they're in order. And one of those being an enduring power of attorney document, an EPOA. These are documents that are typically done up by solicitors. They're not in the wheelhouse of financial advisors to draft them, but they are important documents for everybody to have. Everybody who's over age 18 should be considering, do I have an enduring power of attorney? And what an enduring power of attorney does is says that the power of attorney part means I am giving an attorney, so another person, the ability to be me, and enduring means indefinitely. So that's how we break that one down. You can actually have a general power of attorney, which says I'm going overseas for a period of time, and I will, for a limited period, give someone the ability to be me. And enduring means I'm giving them that option indefinitely. So the document itself, we talk about this a lot in client meetings because it's not something that everybody has, and it is very powerful. If you think about it from a legal sense, there's really nothing else that says somebody has the right to be you. You think about how much we're protecting ourselves these days from fraud of people wanting to take over your identity. Well, this is you giving someone the ability to have your identity for a period of time or indefinitely. Now, a power of attorney, it's such a position of trust then, because what does the document exist to do? It exists for typically two reasons. One is I have some medical needs that need to be looked after, and I give someone the ability to make those medical decisions for me. So even being able to speak to a doctor on your behalf or to make some major decisions about your medical position, that's what it does. Secondly, the document allows someone from a financial perspective to be able to make decisions as well. So that can be as basic as signing off on establishing direct debit payments for your rates and your insurances. It can be moving money from bank to bank. It can be major things like selling down on hundreds of thousands of dollars in a portfolio to be able to fund care costs if that's what you need at some point in time. But enduring powers of attorney have different times where they may come into play. They may come into play because you've had a particular additional care need. So for many people, it may be I've lost some capacity, some mental capacity for myself. Maybe I'm suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, and therefore my loved ones around me put this power of attorney into place and say, well, I need to look after things for you. Sometimes, like I say, people might go overseas and they need that for a period of time to go in place because they can't do transactions whilst they're inside Australia. There are different reasons, but particularly in this scenario where we're talking about I've aged now or something's happened to me from a medical position and I need to give somebody that ability to make decisions on my behalf. For dual income, no kids situations, really, who do we give that position of trust to? So oftentimes we'll find that partners naturally will take that position for one another firstly. So for myself and my husband, Todd, we are each other's enduring power of attorney, and I trust him indefinitely that if something didn't happen to me, he can make those decisions. Now, what happens when you have maybe adult children is that you might consider, well, what happens if both myself and my husband were not able to make decisions because, God forbid we were in a car accident or something like that together. If I had a child that was over age 18, Leo's not at the moment, he's 10, but if I had a child over age 18, I might be saying, well, they might be able to be an attorney for me. And you can nominate multiple people in these kinds of documents. But as you get older, the likelihood of putting someone into a position as an attorney that's younger than you is higher, right? Because if I now think when I'm in my 80s, even if I'm in my 60s, do I really want to give this position of an attorney to somebody maybe like my parents or auntie and uncle or, a family friend or a mentor or whoever that may be that's really close to me? Do I really want that to go to somebody that is older than me because the likelihood of them having a health issue or being able to make those same decisions from a mental capacity perspective is maybe lower as well. So this is typically why we see power of attorney documents might go down the line and go to somebody that after partners or after, a close friend or whatnot, might be, children or the likes. So for DINKs, this is a real consideration because if I don't have children, what happens if we can't make decisions for ourselves? And the thing that we have spoken about quite a bit is the idea that financial advice is a really taboo subject. This is no different. Estate planning is no different. Oftentimes people leave it to the last because it's not fun to think about, and then consequently don't speak openly with friends and family about it, and therefore don't really have somebody that they might be able to put in that position. So the first thing that we suggest is make it an open topic. Make it something that you should want to speak to your friends and your family about, and put it on the table and go, hey, have you guys thought about this, and what do you do in this situation? Because you may well find that you do have friends or family or somebody that you do implicitly trust and could open a dialogue with them and say, well, would you be comfortable being an attorney for me? And this is what I would want to happen if something did, God forbid, happen to me. But they're important conversations to have beforehand, because an attorney actually needs to accept that position. They need to sign on the line and say, yes, I accept that position, for that to be a valid document from the outset. And that's one side of the equation, right? Then you've got the other side of the equation of who do I actually put in place to administer my estate as the executor of my will. That one you don't have to tell the person about beforehand. They don't need to sign the document. It's always best that you have had that conversation, though. And it is a similar thing for DINKs. They need to consider, well, there's two fronts to this now. Where is my wealth actually going to transfer to if I do have it left? And then who's going to administer that? So if I don't have any children, what do I want to happen from an intergenerational wealth sense? Do I have nieces and nephews that I'd like money to go to? Do I have philanthropic desires? Do I want to give to a charity? Have I thought about who ultimately is going to take up my wealth when I'm no longer here, and what do I want as the steward position for that to look like? And so this is the flip side of the coin, right? It's creating that wealth so that you can live those experiences that you want to throughout the way, but then thinking about, and now who do I ultimately want to leave this to, and what would my request be of the person that inherits this at some point in time? Because you can always do, a nice letter of wishes or something like that says, look, this was the purpose that I was living in my life, and what I'd like to see with this money after I'm no longer here. But it's a real consideration. So my biggest tip in this space is have a chat with those around you, your loved ones, your family, friends, whoever it might be, and make it a non-taboo subject and really talk it through. Wow, we got pretty deep just now into a tough subject, one that a lot of people don't like to think about. But I'm going to bring it back up, make it a bit lighter now. We've been talking a little bit so far on the podcast about DINKs, double income, no kids. And now I want to talk through what are some of the things that we need to be considering if I don't have dependents, that I can make sure my financial future is set up. So back to our listeners' question, they wanted to know about how can I make sure that we're set up for our financial future. I would be remiss not to talk about the contingencies that you need in place, though. And we've spoken about building up some capital so that if you need some funding, you've got it there. What if I don't have that capital yet? And this is the place where insurances become really important. So if I am accumulating my wealth, I'm getting out there, I'm working hard, I've got the income coming in. What happens if I don't have income coming in, or what happens if my partner doesn't, or both of us? Now, having insurances in place can really help because it can fund things like your medical expenses, but it can also, for DINKs, it can also fund carers. Now, we spoke about having that pool of funds available. And that way you can afford the ability to have a carer. But if you don't have that there, you could always have in place some insurances, things like your trauma insurances, which cover major medical events. So what about if I have a trauma-related event such as a cancer, coronary artery disease, heart attack, stroke? I know I said I was going to go more light, but here we are. We're delving back into it. Trauma insurance is there to pay for those major expenses, medical expenses like that. Or we've got total permanent disablement that says if I cannot work and I can never go back to work in typically in any occupation that I've had training or experience, although there's different specifics on any versus own occupation TPD, which we won't get into right now. Those insurances can really be helpful for giving you the ability to provide for a carer and make house modifications and all the things that you might need if you weren't able to go back to work, or even just your income protection for a temporary disablement. That really affords you the ability then to go, okay, I'm not reliant on anyone. I don't need to be reliant on kids, but I also don't need to be reliant on parents or siblings or whoever it may be to look after me. So one thing I would suggest is make sure that you're carving out part of your budget and putting it towards insurances. They're not fun things to have to think about again, but it becomes critically important if you don't have the money coming in, that you can still have the options of who's going to provide you with care should something happen. Whilst we're on the topic of cash flow, let's talk a little bit about what you can be doing if you do have two lots of income coming in and you don't have school fees and additional food costs, et cetera, for kids. Why would we not be capturing some of that surplus for you? You know, just pretend like you do have dependents. If I didn't have children, I could just be carving out an amount every week or fortnight that I can put aside towards my financial future. There's actually an interesting study that I ran across by the OECD from 2022, so not that long ago now, and it showed that a couple needed to budget for around about 17% of their wages to cater for net childcare costs. And so this is an assumption that if I've got two young children, one's age 2, one's age 3, it's roughly going to cost me around about 17% of my wages to cater for those childcare costs. Now, that's not an insignificant portion of your budget, and we know that this is not a definite figure, and everyone's different, and but it can't hurt to be using that as a bit of a general guide and saying, well, if I don't have these expenses that other families do have, why not just try and carve that out, put that aside for me, and say, well, there's my future capital going to good use, instead of putting it towards kids' expenses right now. One other area that we have spoken a bit before about too. Now, if you haven't already heard it, tune into our podcast, What You Should Invest In, and this will spur you into action here. But I'm going to talk a little bit about investing in yourself again now. Now, if I don't have kids and I'm thinking about it this way, for couples that are parents, they spend a lot of money to invest in their children's future. And I've been talking a little bit lately about how Leo is in year 5. He's 18 months away from transitioning to high school. And what am I going to do when he ultimately does get to high school? I just thought he was going to go straight through the school that he's currently in. But apparently it's more complicated than that. And I might need to think about which high school and what is he going to go into a trade? Is he going to go into a university? I don't have any of those answers right now. But what I do know as a parent is I want to make sure that I'm investing in his future. And I do that through education and sporting and all those bits and pieces. But if I didn't have Leo, I should be investing in my future, because I'm my biggest income earner, right? So, and like I said earlier, we all cross our fingers and hope that if it comes down to it, the kids are going to look after me. But for dinks, they don't have the children. So invest in yourself. It seems like a smart plan to me. If I work on me, I'm creating more financial capacity in myself, and I can put more money aside and build a bigger nest egg that can cater for, my care needs in the future and what I want my goals to be, more so than what I am today. So don't accept the status quo. Go out there and chase down what it is that you want to aspire to. Think about, if I want to be bigger and have more personal growth than I have today, what do I need to get there? Are there education costs that I need for myself? Are there do I want to be managing a team of people, or do I want to start a business? Or there's so many opportunities for you to do. So that would be my strategy, is getting out there, investing in yourself, and then capturing that surplus cash flow. And ultimately, like we say, it's about finding your true wealth and then truly living it. If you're choosing a life without children, just think about the things that it affords you to do and put a plan into a place to achieve those things. Yes, it does have its hurdles, like we're discussing earlier, but you've chosen this pathway for a reason. So forge it now, and if you want to build for your financial capacity in the future, that way you've got a passive income stream and you can live the life that you're dreaming of. So if you're a DINK or a DINK-WOD or a 𝐴𝑐𝐞, I don't know what the term is for single income, no kids situation. I'm just going to make that up. Let's see if it sticks. And if you've loved today's episode, please feel free to send us some more questions on this topic and we'd be happy to answer them. I'm sure that we could speak for days on end about it, so please hit me up. Don't forget, please follow us and share our content with anyone that you know could be benefiting from listening, and we'll catch you next time on Wealth Experience. The opinions of the presenters are objectively ascertainable and are not intended to be financial product or personal advice.